So the topic of our session is sustainability and how we, so kind of to make it concrete, how can we make sure that all the great things that we're working on will be available for as long as possible after the project. And we're quite early in the process, so we're kind of just sourcing ideas and trying to figure out which approaches would work well. In the program you can see, and here as well, that we have business models, but we're not necessarily only, not necessarily only talking about business models, but sustainability pathways in a broader sense. How can we make sure that all of this will be going to last? We'll be using a mirror board, but you don't have to hurry. I have this link on every slide, so you still have some time to navigate your way to the board. This is the agenda for what we are aiming to do. So I'll give a short introduction on the outcomes of the LUMEN project. Most of you will be aware now on the third day what these are, so this will be very short. And then I'll highlight a couple of sustainability pathways that might be appropriate for our project. And then we have some breakout sessions for some of our key outcomes. We have colored paper, and I'll ask you then to move around into groups so we can work on these. And then once you have discussed, we'll come back together to kind of make a synthesis and summarize what we've learned. The 5 thematic groups that we'll have focus on 4 outcomes. So the first one is the white label platform that we're developing within LUMEN, which includes other services such as the chatbot that we've talked about just before, visualizations and so on. Then the federation of platforms, that is the concrete instantiations of this white label platform in different communities. The LUMES infrastructure, which we've talked about yesterday as well, and I'll give a short introduction, and the EOSC Innovation Center. And since people online can't readily kind of hop onto one of these tables that we have here, Leonie will facilitate a discussion group with a broader focus in general on the different models. Exactly, and the tasks for you are to discuss these sustainability modes that we have collected, but also discuss others if you have other ideas, then prioritize them briefly and summarize what you've been discussing before we then come back together. But this is all outlined on the mirror board as well, just to give you a brief overview. So, the open source white label platform, as I said, what we're doing in LUMEN is taking the code base of GoTriple and generalizing it with the aim of having an open source solution that other communities can customize for their domain and can implement. And this obviously reduces costs, but also has some challenges in terms of how we can maintain this code base, how we can serve the different communities, how can we onboard them, how can we make sure that this software product that we'll be having is useful in the future as well, and not just when the project stops. Then we have, as I said, the federation of platforms. That's GoTriple and the other planned or already implemented instantiations of such search platforms in the domains. So we have SSH, we have maths, earth systems, and molecular dynamics. And here again, we have multiple challenges in terms of sustainability. First, we need to maintain the individual nodes, so make sure that these nodes are operational for their individual communities, but also with the topics that we discussed over the last days, with the meta search and so on, make sure that these nodes can interoperate and that we have a governance to maintain all of this together. Then we have LUMES. As we've discussed yesterday, the aim is to have a unified platform to integrate existing tools to orchestrate this workflow for creating semantic artifacts. And here again, there are certain challenges. It's supposed to be a service that runs and is available to researchers and ontologists, obviously. So it will need ongoing maintenance. It will need server kind of covering of server costs and other aspects, and we'll need a solution for that as well. And then we have the EOSC Innovation Center. There is still some reframing and discussion ongoing of what this can be and what it should be. The idea is that we build a space for innovation within EOSC We've called it Serendipity Engine, and the format is still not entirely clear. It might be, ideally, the vision was to have a physical center somewhere where people can actually come together and think about problems. The issue with that is, of course, that it might be tricky to make that happen. So again, there's the question of what can we do, how is it running, and how can it be maintained for a longer time. Right, these are the different outcomes that we have. And for these, we want you then to discuss certain pathways towards sustainability. And this is just the result of some desk research that we did. We looked into results that we had from the Triple project as well. And we tried to be as comprehensive as possible, but it might be that you know of other pathways that are relevant, and you're, of course, very welcome to bring them into the conversation. We have structured it along three broader themes. The first one is what we currently have as well for some of the platforms, public and project-based funding. And there might also be other sources, but it's kind of funded through different projects with a certain runtime. Then we have certain models that have a more structural element to them. This could be community contributions, kind of starting from a lower engagement level to membership models, but also maybe a more concrete integration into the EOSC infrastructure, or even a consortium or ERIC model. And then we could have market and service-based models, like we've already heard today. For the chatbot, an idea is to have kind of a freemium model, a tiered access where there's a free version and then you pay for extra features. We could also have professional services and so on. So this is kind of the grand overview. And I'll give you a little more detail on some of these, but we've also prepared a sort of reference sheet that's on some of the tables where you will be working in case you need a little more background to discuss about them. This is not kind of ground truth, the final end product. It's just a working document so that you can look up certain things of how this could work. Right, so the community contribution model would be something like Wikipedia or open source development in general. More you have volunteers contributing to your code base. And so this, as we have here, relies on passion rather than payment. It would be great if this were a part of it so that we can engage a community and find people who are active and who care about our outcomes, who are then also able to contribute. But this can probably only be part of the whole picture. So to take one step back, obviously one solution might also be to combine different models in different ways, depending on how they fit certain outcomes. Then we might have models of institutional or organizational support. As examples I have here, Go Triple or JSTOR, where you have certain institutions, maybe scientific communities, research organizations that say, we value this service and we provide some funding for it. And we also have here on the slides, which are also linked and on the Miro board, but for the sake of time, I'm going a little quicker through these, where they could fit best potentially. So here maybe they could fit for the white label discovery platform, the federation of platform, and so on. But you can look at those as well when you're working on them. Then we could have an integration into broader infrastructures. That's obviously a relatively complex topic, but one that keeps coming up. The question of what's the relationship of the services that we have to the different aspects of EOSC, how they are evolving. Obviously, it will be hard to find a definitive answer right now because EOSC is also changing, but this is certainly something that we also need to consider and see how we can position our solutions towards that. Then we can have the on the business model side, tiered access models, as I said, as an example, something like LinkedIn or maybe Spotify or Consensus, where you have a free basic version and then you can have extra features for which you pay. There might be also some difficulties with that. The question is, how many users can we actually acquire? Can we even kind of maintain the model itself? Because there might be costs for the system that deals with the payments and so on. So there are lots of different considerations, and that's why we're here to just map them out and discuss about them a little bit. And there might be also a space where we could offer professional services, especially around the software products that we have. So it might be that we have the white label discovery platform, and then we offer for other communities a service to implement it for them. This is an example from our domain. Is also the open journal system, PKP, where the software in itself is free, but you can get, I think for a couple of €1,000 a year, you can get paid hosting or similar to WordPress and others, where you say, okay, we have a software, you can use it if you're able to, and if you're not able, we can provide you with help to do that. And this could be on different levels, obviously, kind of from implementation to training or other types of support. Right. Are there any questions to what I've been talking about up front? Cool. You're free to ask any questions at any time, of course. I'll just give again an introduction. We'll slowly transition now to the Miro board, so I hope you had a chance to open the link. We'll also put the link into the chat. I hope, Leonie, you will be able to do that. Again, the reminder, we have these 4 groups in the room, and the online group will mute the online group so that they won't hear us and we won't hear them, so they can work on their own. And once we're ready to come back, we'll communicate via the chat. We'll turn it back on. So what I would ask you is, based on your understanding of the different outputs that we have in Lumen, that you think about where you could contribute the best. So we have these colors also on the Miro board. I've put the sheet for the open source white label platform over here. The EOSC Innovation Center a little bit further back in blue. I've put Loomis where Jan is already, so that's quite practical for him. And then I've put the Federation of Platforms to Julien. I'm not sure whether Julien is with us currently, but it's on his desk. And if you're wanting to talk about concrete instantiations, then please form a table around there. I'll introduce the Miro board shortly before we start working. What's important is that we need you to record a little bit of what you're talking about on the board as well. So it would be great if you could dedicate at least one person within your group to take some notes. We have also set the board up in a way that it should be fairly easy to understand where you should be putting things, but just make sure that someone in your group is taking some notes. And also, I'll ask one person of each group after to very briefly, in 2 or 3 minutes, present the outcome of what you've been working on, to just keep that in mind as well. So I'll now show you the Miro board just to introduce how this works. I can see many people here already. That's great. So here on top you have the agenda again and how you're going to work. Then you have a link to the slides. Unfortunately, that's only working for people within Lumen, but I'm sure we will make that work for others as well. We have sufficient number of laptops. And then we have these different, let's say, tracks for each of these. And here I would ask you to then look at what's here. We'll first ask you to discuss the pros and cons of the individual pathways, and then why we should target each of these. And this should be a broad discussion. So you can talk about the outcomes that the sustainability modes that we've listed. You can also bring others into the conversation. Really, we're starting this process and want to source as much input as we can, and you to be as creative as possible. And then I'll tell you when it's time to go to the next. People have started here already. That's great. We'll need to be a little systematic about how many likes we distribute, but we'll ask you to rate different models for the different outcomes. And then this is the critical part. I'll also ask you specifically again, but once you have discussed, there is then a space for you to really summarize succinctly in 3 sentences, let's say up to 3 sentences, what is the kind of main result of your discussion. And then there is also space. Obviously, we might be thinking completely in the wrong way about this, and maybe you think we should be doing something totally different. We'll come to that at the end, and there's space to put things here. But for now, we'll focus on these segments. Is that somewhat clear? Are there any questions? I don't have a QR code, but I have a link with a short code. So it's bit.ly/IPL Tech Workshops 8. Okay. Leonie, can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect, we can hear you. So, thank you, everyone. I can see lots of happy faces, lots of lively discussion. which is great, and you can have can continue the conversation after over lunch and after lunch and over the next weeks. We'll now slowly start to come back together and report back a little to the whole group what we've been working on, what our main insights are, and so on. And I would first ask Leonie if it's possible for you or someone else from the online group to briefly run us through what you've been discussing and what your kind of main takeaways are from the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So Mathieu and I were discussing alone. So, and we thought of a kind of different idea, like apart from the things that were given. So we said it's like the first thing that would be important for the whole thing, like as a holistic perspective, would be, of course, that we need to build a big community and through that gather a lot of data and expertise. And one possibility then would be to access or to provide access to the data and provide a kind of consulting for accessing the data, or also a dedicated interface or services for companies. So, for instance, if we had have a lot of data on the different instantiations of the white label platforms, then we could say, okay, if someone wants to analyze this or use this for their R&D or something, then we could say, okay, if you don't have the expertise, we might have a lot of people, researchers who can help you access it, and possibly also an interface. So such an interface, of course, is who gathers all the data and aggregates it. Is not there yet, but this could be developed maybe as an extension in a smaller project. So we were just thinking big and outside the box, I guess, a bit with that. And also we thought if we have through this project, there are so many talented researchers and engineers in this project, and also will be part of the different platforms. And for that, there could be a possibility to have something like a matchmaking between industry and researchers. So to say, okay, if an industry is or company is looking for some research projects or research supported projects, then it could be kind of a hinder for researcher and industry.
Okay, thank you very much, Leonie. We are a little tight, so we'll organize this as kind of just a quick round of people giving their summary, and then we might have a short segment where we can discuss a little more broadly. So we would go now to the next one, and if I could ask the people online as well, people have been putting things on the stickies, but if you think there's something missing from what they're telling us now, then please add it. Do we have someone from the white label platform who will tell us what you have been discussing about? Thank you, Susanne.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we address several aspects in our group. The first one, very quickly, because so what we said is that we would need a couple of hours for each of the nodes that we took, but so first discussing about who will need this platform, and we came with first we started with the communities, because it's a white label platform, so it should be designed for the community, and then that means it can interest the ERIC, because it can become a service of each ERIC first. Then we proposed the possibility of media company or public organization, and it's also written above industry. So these organizations can also be interested in having a white label platform to put their own data. So even if it's not scientific data, they can put their own data in order to facilitate the search and the discovery of what they have already and what they have produced in terms of legal document, report, or anything else. So this is where we identify the other type of organization. Then we move to another, or we mix everything, but We address also the topic of what should we charge and what are the key features. So something that was quite clear is about the customization of the platform. So because it's open source, so they can do whatever they want because they have the code. But if they need any type of support to customize the platform, this is where we can charge something. We were wondering if we provide also the hosting as a service or not. So it's still a question in the discussion. It can be also training, how to better use the different services that we provide, but also training also in terms of enriching their own data, because it can be a mess in what they have, and so we can also do this work. And in terms of model, so what we propose is more something, a mix of the different models, and mainly the tiered access model with the freemium thing and professional services. And with the tiered access model, not to forget, we said that maybe we can have the platform for free in terms of number of usage. Is it per day, per user? We haven't addressed that point, but at least number of usage. And then if people need more, they have to pay. Is it okay for you? Yeah? Globally? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Susanne. That's very useful, and we'll check out all the other content on the board. I can see that there's lots of other things there as well. Let's move on now to Loomis. Is it okay if I give it to you, Jan?
Sure. It's a great work, but it's hard to get everything done in 30 minutes because Loomis is a bit peculiar. It's not been developed and so on. So we discussed several things. First, customers, also the type of business streams or funding streams we could find to maintain this. We also had discussions, and I led to something interesting. Loomis basically aggregates tools together into a coherent workflow. So maybe one of the business models that we haven't thought of is a marketplace model, where you actually provide access to professional tools through the platform, and the companies would pay you a fee to be part of the platform. We agreed that, well, basically we want to get it free for a researcher, and that relates to values for Loomis. So we need to define the values and what we want to do with that. Do we want to make it profitable or non-profitable? I mean, just maintaining, so there are different models and different views. What is sure is that this is going to be valuable for industry. We've seen that in the OntoCommons context. Our industry is picking up with ontologies, and they don't have that kind of platform, so that could be useful for them. So maybe we could work this connection through Graphia, who's making the link with also industry. And then we discussed in terms of funding the development itself, and realized that basically there are different models that can apply at different stages. Before finding a business model and identifying the costs and everything, we need to know how many users we're going to get, right? And it's not like there are 10 million ontologies in the world. So basically, we need to be careful. So we started thinking about potential phases for the development using public and project funding and community contribution. And then once we are ready and mature, then we can go to any other paid per use tiered, depending on the users and the usage.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very useful, and it also aligns with other conversations I had with others that might also apply to the white label platform, that you have a certain type of model for a certain phase in adoption, and that you need then to change and adapt if you have a certain number of users and so on. All right. Next up is the EOSC Innovation Center. Can I give either of you the microphone, or Sai? Yeah, no, Martin?
Okay, so basically we were discussing first of all on the scope. So if this should be EOSC as whole innovation center, or more like an EOSC cross disciplines or cross domain innovation center. So because if we put it under the everything under this umbrella, this might have basically too broad meaning. Then we're thinking of what would be the kind of models or the main services that can be behind of such innovation center, that this could give like innovation management as a service for different projects to support all the process. basically an insight of this project for curation, for kind of brokerage and helping innovate. So if I have an idea and I want to innovate, I come to the center helps me find appropriate user communities or the companies or whoever that helps give feedback to this product to basically to support. Okay, so basically we were also discussing about different pathways and also whom we should target and whom to collaborate, like the data spaces, like the ages, like different actors. So what is important for also sustainability? We're thinking how to create something that can sustain outside of the project. So that was also the goal. It's very an easy thing. So one for sure could be the next projects, but the next project has this. You can get the project or not. If this will be too scattered, you might not. The center might not have enough resources to do it properly. So, or this could go through institutional support of few stakeholders, but it should be several that are identified that can have really interest and incentives in it. So that's very important to work together. And basically then you can start having these services as utility and then having some business model behind. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you know, the main focus we think should be cross-domain experimentation and collaboration. So just calling it, like Marcin made a very good point, just calling it EOSC Innovation Center, it's just so huge and people kind of don't know what you really can expect from this. So, so cross-domain collaboration is something that's really, really appreciated by researchers, but it needs to have a method because, of course, people get lost in even thinking about the idea. So that's where the, let's say, unique, I won't say unique selling proposition, I already said this once this week, unique research proposition, URP, we'll invent a new term, is I think, for this. And then the sort of things that we can do with that is because we already know from huge, like years and years of experience of the people who are participating in this, know what are the ingredients of doing a cross-domain innovation space. So if we map out the ingredients, we see what is already available. For example, there will be tools available from Lumen and Graphia that you could put in as a toolkit. We can also partner with other European Open Science Cloud projects to pull in their tools. So that part we know how to go about. There are some other things where we might need to set the foundation and then apply for funding where we can build it. Because, of course, we're not going to solve everything or build a huge center with this one project. So if we start early, and Marcin is absolutely right, we start early with setting the parameters, there are several things that we have already, right, just by talking, identified where we could go as groups into proposals and say, we're going to build this part of it, we're going to be that, for example, just an innovation action that could have a whole bunch of use cases of cross-domain collaboration where we could test pilots, for example, is a very obvious one.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Unfortunately, we need to move on. Yes, thank you, Elena.
And we will finish this review. And I'd like to start with this, 3 main points with our outcomes. And then we started our discussion that it's difficult to define and decide for communities without communities, because we do need to hear their feedback, actually. So it's kind of reflection, but also action point. But we planned it a couple of days ago, so we will follow up on that. Point number 2 is that we need to think of benefits, both from scientific results point of view, what do we bring extra as a federated platform, but also of economy of scale. Do we save some resources if we have this platform? Also, we need to compare potential federation models, like different ones, in terms of synergy effects and also sustaining opportunities. And if we really find a good one, then we could potentially consider expansion beyond existing communities. So definitely we should start with existing community because we co-create and build. But if we find the model, sustainability model, then we can scale beyond. So it's very important outcome. But also we have a couple of stickers here that we have both federation of platforms as a task, but we also have Lumen governance. And then we need to define like who is who and what doing what, because it looks pretty, you know, intersecting with each other. And I saw that somebody just put here, USP need to be made very clear. That's definitely, yeah. And then also a couple of things from our discussions.
Just some very short
like,
highlights, if you can.
Just so we need to define levels of federation. Actually, what we do federate, like is it the data, white label platforms, or single interfaces, like, and then we also need to consider sustainability of the platform as a core backbone, but also consider its components. So we need those, you know, layers and components. We need to consider these decompositions, because otherwise we couldn't, you know, say something, this is the only sustainability model. So, and as for some models, we thought of cross-domain institutional support and some public funding, but also people liked some other models. Some also a couple of people believed in EOSC, so and voted from their hearts. So that's it from our side. Thanks.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you everyone for your inputs. I think it's obvious, and we knew that from before, that we're not going to solve this today, and that it's very complex. Thank you for all the great inputs. I don't want to take too much time from your lunch break, but maybe like 2 or 3 minutes. Maybe you have some overarching observations. Maybe you think we should be looking at something else, and still consider other aspects. We'd be very happy to hear from you, just to have some broader input, so that we can kind of shape the direction of the work for the next months.
During the discussion on Loomis, we were discussing the fact that maybe Loomis could be a paid features of a Lumen global offer. Right, so that could be something that could be interesting, is like instead of doing that individually, trying to see if we cannot just group them into one service offer that connects the white label platform and the different tools, and then decide that the freemium model would apply, for instance, in building ontologies, because that's where you get value or other things. So that could be also another angle.
Okay, thank you. Any other cross-cutting ideas? Thoughts, comments?
So across the board, everybody talking about building a community.
In the mic.
Sorry. So across the board, everybody, I see everybody's talking about building the community, starting as the first point. I think maybe we should start building the community, although we are a community, but we can still extend to build a bigger community. I think that point was kind of missing, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree that we need kind of to connect to the existing communities, but also build community around what we're trying to do to be able to onboard people as early as possible. Thank you. Any last comments? If not, then I'll say thank you again. Thank you for participating. I know it was very short on time and a lot of input, but I think this was very useful for us. And now have a good lunch, I would say.